Roundly. Next section, we're going to be delving into the world of end-to-end encryption. We're going to be asking whether the risks over AI warrant greater transparency and oversight in our encrypted data. So over now to Vikram Chandra with his guests to discuss balance between privacy and innovation in the AI age.
Thanks a lot, Edie. Thank you for that. And I have a feeling we're going to end up going a little bit further than just the topic that you have up there, because if you are to take a look 10 years from now, 15 years from now, look back at 2023, look at the 12 months that we've just had, I would be prepared to wager a large sum of money on the fact that this will be remembered as a year when AI really captured everybody's consciousness, caught everybody's attention. The questions that are being asked right now are going to be very relevant, not just for our present, but also for our future. And those questions do include ethics and data privacy and, all of those things. But the questions are also a little bit deeper than that, as we've been seeing very recently in some of the drama around OpenAI and Sam Altman and that clash between doomers and people who believe that AI is the solution to everything. So to help us to navigate these really choppy waters, absolutely fantastic panel. Let me start by calling them up. Mohandas Pai, chairman of Aarin Capital Partners, who's an expert in just about anything you care to ask him, and is also, of course, he's the person who was one of the people leading Infosys, other things, been very clearly. Come on, grab a seat. We also have with us Sachin Duggal, chief wizard at Builder AI, who's been building the AI, and we're going to be asking him whether whatever he's building is safe or unsafe, or whether it's going to wipe us out or not. Shashank, Bijapur, CEO and co-founder of SpotDraft, using AI, among other things, to solve all sorts of legal questions and legal problems. If you think you need lawyers to do that, well, not necessarily, because AI can help you with a lot of that. And last but not least, Dr. Krishnadas, Nanath, who's a head and founder of Insight Labs, expert in many areas around AI. Ethics in particular is something that he also talks about and teaches at great length. So please do grab a seat, everybody. And let me just start off, before I start talking about the data dilemma and the ethical frontiers and the rest of it. Look, the first basic ethical frontier that I think we should probably try and address is whether we're all going to be wiped out by AI in the next 5 years or 10 years or not. Is this human extinction approaching? As if you were to read social media or see some of the more sensational press, or if you were to really be looking at the debate that was underlying a lot of what was happening at OpenAI right now. One, I'm going to start with you. It was really a question of, are we going too fast? Not that will AI eventually be really powerful. The question was, is AI going to become too powerful?
No, I think AI is going to be powerful because it will have capacities beyond the ability of an ordinary human being. But I think there are enough smart people on the planet to make sure that AI is used for the good of humanity. AI can be used for controlling humanity, and that is worrisome. And that's why all of us need to debate, put in proper regulations. And my suggestion is, we need a global compact like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 in the UN. We need a Universal Declaration of Digital Rights. So the digital rights of 8 billion people on the planet are protected. And we need to debate that now, because the speed at which AI is changing and developing is worrisome to people who understand the implications. But it'll be a force of good, it'll transform our lives, it'll help us, and we play it well. But it can be used to control the human mind, and that is extremely worrisome.
You're talking about AI being used to control the human mind by humans, right? That's the first part.
By humans, maybe over a period of time, it develops intelligence of its own, which logical intelligence is very difficult, okay? But systemic intelligence is something that can be done based on data, because it can keep responding to you in a chatbot in a way where it just controls you. And I think we've got to get deep into this, and we're seeing the effect of all this in a very different way. For example, Vikram, you've seen that you create people's images in AI and use their voice to speak and pass a message which is not their message. Yeah. Now, none of us, 99.99% of humans, cannot distinguish the real person and that message because, we don't know. We're just seeing a face, we're seeing the voice, we're seeing a message. We believe it's true because we trust things. We trust people, media people like you two, right?
Media people would never do anything wrong, right? So that's
of course. The
Have
great
you
people.
ever heard of a media person trying to misrepresent facts or paint facts wrongly? It never happens.
No,
Absolutely.
you don't do it.
But all right, humans misbehaving is one thing and is quantifiable risk. Sachin, I'm going to turn to you to the unquantifiable risk, which has got, even people like Elon Musk. But why are they worried right now? It's because their hypothesis is something else. It's not about humans doing something wrong. They're saying we could be in a path where 5 years, 10 years from now, you'll have artificial general intelligence. Then you'll have AI systems who are smarter than humans. And why is that scary? It's because if you look at the entire history, not just of the human species, but of all life ever, anywhere in the universe, when you have something smarter than something else, something more technologically advanced than something else, that wins. That always wins. And if humans are creating something that is going to be smarter than them, who knows what the future has? Is that science fiction or is that a genuine concern?
Look, I think if you think about the concept of the singularity, it's the event horizon beyond which we cannot fathom what's going to happen. So I find these discussions really intellectual because the whole point of the singularity is we haven't quite imagined what the possibility is, right? So I think that's one. It's like you can't see inside the black hole. The reason you can't see inside the black hole is light passes the event horizon and gravity is so strong it destroys light. And you went back 50 years, we never thought light could be destroyed. But we've now realized that light is both matter and wave. So let's not talk about, in my opinion, what we think is a 10, 20 year out potential for the singularity. And the reason is it fundamentally needs evolution of the general stack that doesn't exist today. And what are those evolutions? So you have to visualize the current state of AI, and maybe in the last week it's probably gone from 56K dial-up to 128K ISDN. It is not broadband yet. And why is that, right? So I give you an example, and I've used this analogy before. Imagine, and this is sort of quite topical, we were trying to teach two children about Indian independence. We were going to teach a child in New Delhi and we were going to teach a child in London. Actually, we know that sovereignty is based on culture. Culture is based on history. History never has one version of the truth. In the current way of how, just to say one part of AI language models work, is they assume volume is an indicator of authenticity or accuracy. So he or she that buys the most amount of volume to say this is the version of history that's the truth, the LLM will learn that as the version of truth and will start answering, and then ultimately you have the risk, this is a today risk by the way, not 20-year risk, that history becomes homogeneous. Yeah. History is not homogeneous. So let's go a little bit further. So I think you have, I think that's one. I think the second issue is we've got an over-dependence on, at this sort of, at least in the last 1 year, two things have happened, right? And I think we've missed them, right? I think one is we've generalized all AI to be large language models. And that's far from the truth. If you think about how the human mind works, we actually have three composite functions, we have many functions, but three high-level functions. So think about a memory when you were a child. You get the memory instantly. You're not generating the memory. Really important, you don't generate a memory, you retrieve a memory. So the smallest token in AI parlance is the memory. Second is if I said to you, guess the next word, what am I going to
say?
Say. That is a graph neural network because it is propagation based on enough fidelity of data to tell me what am I going to do next, but it's pure inference. And then I'm saying, let's write a poem about IGF. That's purely generative, right? So the world is not all generative because these two pieces are needed. And when these three streams come together, sort of talking about Q star, it's the first time when these three streams are sort of coming together.
And you're getting logic for the first time, perhaps, potentially.
Well, you're getting logic because neural networks are logic by default. Knowledge graphs are semantic representations of logic, right? So the minute you can use the knowledge, the childhood memory, the what am I going to say next, inferred, and then I can generate, I'm getting like, a 6-year-old's logic at this point. And the big step change is going to be, how fast can I compute it? And so your big issue right now is a big issue. I'm sort of happy at this point because we don't know what's going on. Is that quantum is quite far away, and you need that last piece to be able to, in my opinion, really get to generalized intelligence.
But I'm just going to stay with this like a dog with a bone before I come back to some of the other issues, including the positive stuff. So, Shashank, if you look at the debate that has been happening for a while and accelerated, obviously, in the last 1 year, may have been behind a lot of what was happening with OpenAI as well. To take as example, we don't exactly know what lies behind the event horizon of a black hole, which is why you would be somewhat alarmed if scientists were sitting on the planet and saying, let's try and create a black hole in a lab. You'd say, what are you doing? If there's somebody in a lab in
but
Wuhan,
they are.
They are, and I'm not sure it's necessarily sensible. If tomorrow somebody told you I'm sitting in Wuhan in China and I'm doing, possibly gain of functions on viruses to see if we can have a new variety of COVID, we'd be really concerned. We're saying, look, think about what's happening. So I guess the people who are concerned right now is, seeing as you don't know what's going to happen, seeing as you don't know when it could take that next step, should you be careful or should you not? And the other side is saying the only way you can be careful is to have government regulation, and that's a form of totalitarianism, and you guys are Luddites and you're anti-science.
Yeah, I think we need to stop looking at AI as the problem and start looking at AI as the solution, which is really what it is intended to be. And in the history of technology, which is all aimed at us being more lazy, there have always been more and more there's always been a debate against the technology that's coming out. When the cars came out, it was all the horse carriage drivers who said that, hey, this needs to stop. And then now we are talking about carbon pollution, which is way down the line. So to draw inference from that, I think, yes, there could be...
If I may interrupt you, the only difference is that this is the first time it's more intelligent than you and potentially more capable than you.
So it is the first time that each one of us can try it out without having to write a line of code, which is why there is this debate. The ability to take unstructured data and create structure out of it is not a new concept. It has been there starting from like RPAs all the way now. But I think it is the ability for each one of us to be able to do it, which is exciting. I mean, think about it. In a world where cars are driving themselves, why are we still paying lawyers thousands to copy-paste words on a contract, right? I mean, if AI can come and change that, it's for the good, and we all know about lawyers, and so yeah. But to your point, and on Wuhan,
lawyers compete with media persons.
we can have a debate on that sometime. But
yeah. Who's the best person for AI to replace? I guess is the first question. Yes.
But to make a final point on your example on Wuhan, we are also going to be able to find out the ability of a new virus coming out and perhaps create a vaccine beforehand instead of waiting for it to infect the whole world and then go back. So there are two parts to it, and it's a little more nuanced than being purely black and white.
All right, Dr. Nanath, let me get you in. If you're looking at this from an ethics point of view, would your ethics be on some of the big picture, scary stuff that I was referring to so far, or would it be more around questions like privacy, like what Mohan was saying, people, either big tech companies or governments having too much access, privacy problems, data breach problems, security problems. Would that worry you more, or the bigger questions around, AGI?
Pretty good question. I think probably a more serious concern, much more than ethics and privacy, would be the human intent of what they are trying to do with AI. And traditionally, I've been a big believer of the fact that, as Shashank rightly said, since the time tech originated, it was all about raising questions about the future, what will happen, how it would happen, and so on. And pretty much same is happening with AI, but the only issue now is human intent behind AI. Let me give you an example. Now, what generally happens is, on a lot of occasions, the intent is quite good, what organizations want to do, but eventually, because it is an AI use case, the outcome becomes quite different. And that is where the concept of ethics probably comes in terms of, have you done the intent versus outcome analysis. For example, Netflix. I'm not sure if you have read the story about the thumbnail customization that Netflix wanted to do. The intent was great. They wanted the posters to reflect your taste and so on. But eventually what happened, it turned out to be a racist algorithm. Based on your demographic behavior, it is putting those characters in the thumbnails who are not even main part of the series or the movie. Again, intent versus outcome. So as far as the human intent is itself bad, obviously your AI model is going to be with the bad outcomes. But if the human intent is good, and this is where the ethics comes into picture, that if you put those frameworks in place which could regulate the possible outcomes of what AI could do, this is where is the future line to be. Talking about Mr. Pai's example of deepfake, he said, it could be your voice and your image converting into a video. The other side, we have wonderful examples. Again, possibly the best example that comes to my mind with deepfake is the campaign that Cadbury did with Shah Rukh Khan in India. Does anyone know about this?
No.
So they actually created a Shah Rukh Khan ad where he comes in and says, hey, this Diwali, buy this, and I'm buying this. So now what a small store owner could do, the owner could go to a website, fill out the name of the shop, the place where the shop is, click submit, and it automatically creates ad with Shah Rukh Khan telling about that store and saying, hey, why don't you buy from this store? This guy has wonderful this thing, and free and commercial to use. One ad by Shah Rukh Khan resulted in 100,000 ads being used by SMEs and small shop owners, which is where the other side looks like.
So let me come in the reverse direction. Shashank, one of the areas where, let's face it, AI is already proving to be revolutionary and making a massive positive impact in areas, specifically in areas where it's ANI, right? Artificial narrow intelligence, where you're asking it to do one specific thing and doing it really well. You are getting it to, say, work on AI drafts of legal contracts. Google does it for Google Maps, and all of us use it and use it very successfully. Is that where you think the real power will come in? Not in some generalized system, but getting it to solve specific individual problems and do it much better than humans can.
Yeah, but in order for it to solve that specific problem, it needs to know a little bit of general AI. For example, AI that needs to be able to draft a contract needs to understand the concept of alphabets, words, sentences, connections, and then be able to go deeper into the contract. So yes, there is. I feel like there is going to be an evolution in verticalized, specific AI to start with before it becomes more general and available to everyone. But I'm excited to hear what Sachin has to say about it, because he has, he's building something super specific and towards engineering.
Yeah, I was just about to turn to him. Same question.
So I think we have the risk of confusing machine learning with generalized AI. Things like sentences and words or vector transformers, that's just predicting the next word. It's very far away from sort of the original question, right, around sort of risk. And I think machine learning, computer vision, knowledge graphs, neural networks are very good in many use cases today. We use it for, here's a basket of 50 features. Natasha, tell us the way to organize them. Like, what's the right way? What's the right flow of the application? What's the right way to customize these features? That's a very different problem to opening up a chat experience and being able to answer any question about anything, including logic or information retrieval. And so I think that the narrow use cases are very, very powerful. Credit scoring is a really good example, and credit scoring is not linear algorithms. They're learning over time, but they're using more classical AI, so knowledge graphs, neural networks, machine learning algorithms to be able to predict, and that's stats for all intents and purposes. Right? We haven't yet got to a world where we're really using the modern framework. And you kind of see it, right? Because I think the big risk is ChatGPT and Bard and Claude, they entered a ontology of communication that was reserved for humans. It looked like WhatsApp, felt like WhatsApp. The words were slowed down directly or indirectly. People say because of GPUs. I think it was by design. The vernacular was changed. We stopped calling it confabulations. We started calling it hallucinations. And so human beings freaked out because you had something that sounded like a human but was a bit dumb. In all honesty, but it still sounded really smart dumb. And I think that's sort of that's where I think the general thing is not working yet.
Right. Well, let's come to some of the other questions. A lot of talk about what sort of regulation there should be, what should happen on data privacy. Everyone's data is being, provided in some form or the other. And the more data you're having to put up and upload onto the crowd, the greater the risk that someday it could be used against you. Deepfakes is only just one example, potentially, of that. How do you regulate something like this? Should you regulate something
I think we should ask fundamental question. To whom does my data belong to? It should belong to me. It could be on any platform, Google, X or whatever it is. The data should belong to me. Who will control the data and use the data? It should be me as an individual. Okay? And I think it's important. Where will the data reside? It should be in my country. Because in my country, as a citizen, I'm protected by my government. I don't believe in this surveillance thing in democracies. In dictatorship, it happens anyway. For example, all our data is there in the United States. All the data centers are there. They're all subject to the NSA. They're snooping on your data right now because we are all non-resident aliens in the US. What rights you have is already gone. Uncle Sam knows about you much more than government of India will ever do. So I want it to reside in my country, data sovereignty, right? And the next part is, how will I give the data to somebody to use? So my permission to be taken. And these are the things that we must debate eternally. And then data cannot be free for everybody, because we're all become piece of data. It's become too big. And finally, who is going to protect you against misuse? It is your courts of law. It's your country. Now you say, I don't want government to have data, surveillance. That's nonsense. Because you're already under surveillance by somebody outside your country, and you have no protection. We need protection. And why is that? Because one, there's enormous data available which can be used to control your mind by sending you messages, like it happened when this Meta gave the data to Cambridge Analytica for the elections. You saw it happening in the Great Hack, right? And if AI is added to it, it becomes much more complex. And the second thing is, how we could be shut out. Twitter shut you out. Twitter shut out Trump. You may not agree with Trump, that's different. You can't shut out the President of the United States of America by saying that this is a private platform, I can do what I want, when it's become a public utility. So we must bring in the idea of a public utility, that all platforms which have the data of humans are public utilities, like you have the electricity grid earlier, and you have the telephones as public utility. So bring in the concept, and available to all. Now, Google can shut him out, a young man doing a lot of innovation, right? Are charging many things to have the Google store, Apple store. Apple store, Google stores are monopolies. They could shut out Nikhil. Nikhil has built a great company, wonderful entrepreneurship, but he uses the net. He could be shut out, are charged abnormally high, and they can say the private platform. So we need to think through all this. Okay? And these are big global issues because they can't be germane to a country. It has to be something. Are you
saying essentially that you think big tech has too much power?
Big tech has got monopolistic power which has never happened in human history to that extent. Google is 93% of global search. 93%. All around the world. See, earlier when you had these big monopolies, you need a physical connection to go to people. They have to be in a country you could control them. Now they're all digital. We've all become digital avatars. Now we're going to Meta, to virtual reality. So the entire thing is controlled by one database. Okay? And they can shut you out. They're not reachable. They say we are a force for good, all of the nice stuff. But it's reaching a point where, if you look at the top 10 most valuable companies by market cap, 8 are digital companies. What is the message that's coming? Look at the power of the money they have. Look at the power to buy politicians and influence policy in the United States. You see all that. man, we got to look at it very differently because global tech conglomerates are the biggest threat to humanity because they have the data of all humanity. And we as individuals, petty human beings who, like Caesar, he thus strives the world like a colossus, and we petty men peer from beneath his mighty legs to find dishonorable graves. Exactly your point. This is what it is.
Quick
I want him to be
from everybody
protected.
else to come in on this. Yeah, you're trying to say something.
Yeah, so look, I think I agree with some of what you said. I don't agree with all of it. So I think number one is inferred learning is not an infringement of copyright because we all study history, we learn math, we are inferred learning from someone else and building new on top of what we've learned. I think there is a risk that we just assume all information is owned by the creator and therefore there is no more inferred learning. I think the second thing that where I do agree is that AI is the tip of the iceberg. And we're all talking about the tip, but we've forgotten there's a massive piece underneath. Cloud infrastructure and social media. So the deepfake issue, why is it an issue? It's only an issue because you can disseminate over social media that's entirely controlled in the US.
Yeah.
Why is cloud infrastructure an issue? Because if you could regulate the infrastructure, you could put model level injection in place that makes sure the models work. But no government has regulated cloud. I remember writing a paper for the Prime Minister of India 15 years ago saying the power of few. If we don't regulate this now, it'll be too late later.
All right, let me come to both of you. Same question essentially. If you had to worry right now, right, about the various issues that have been thrown up right now, is it a big tech monopoly that you'd worry about? Is it governments misusing the access that they have on data and governments snooping on you and governments misusing it? Or just private individuals? I've seen videos, for example, saying don't share too many pictures of your kids because some private actor, not a government or a big tech, some private actor could take that video of your kid, create deep fakes with it 5 years later, 10 years later, who knows? So you need to be careful of these things.
Yeah, so there are two parts to the question. The first one is I as an individual user, right? I think there is a moral obligation on companies to give clarity, control, and consent to the data that's being given. So you should know exactly what you're sharing, and you should have control over what you're sharing, and you should take consent, right? That is important. But I actually do not like the fact that governments want to interfere into what private businesses are doing. And I beg to differ here with Mr. Pai, and I'll tell you why. We've seen in fintech what's happened, for example. Right? We've got over-regulation, we've got businesses being shut down.
No.
It is ultimately, they can lay down guidelines on how business is supposed to be done, but you can't come and say what data I can use and how I can use when I am getting the consent for that data with clarity and giving the control to the end user to be able to use it. Right? So it is a private relationship between a company and an end user. The government has nothing to do with it.
I'm seeing heads being shaken violently, which means we could have had a really big debate about this, but unfortunately I'm out of time. So I'm going to come to one last comment from you.
Yeah,
Dr. Same theme.
So I think if you
mediate, if you will, between all the voices.
I'll make one small point.
I think it's a fairly balanced discussion on the intervention and so on. I'll give a very simple example of Google Timeline. I mean, if you just go to timeline.google.com, choose a random day in your life, Google exactly tells you what you're doing. When you started walking, which route did you take, where did you go? And the moment people see this, they're like, how did that happen? And where is this data coming from? And did they take permission? The moment they are asking this question, that means something somewhere went wrong. Of course, Google can have all rights and say, oh, this is where you gave consent, and you're talking about individual level, right? As a moral, ethical, responsibility alert person, I would have given consent, but the real question is, did you put the consent in the right way? With those 10 pages of cryptic documents, if you would have replaced that
one button
with
saying,
one thing which says, we are going to track you every second. Do you agree? And let's see how many of them agree or not. Yep. But having said that, just one more last thing on where I see the future going with data ownership. I think something that happened in the music industry is about to happen with data. So there was time when people were downloading songs from torrents and this and that. Today, hardly we do that, right? We have Spotify, we have Amazon Music. There's a license mechanism by which it has become more organized. Yeah. And I see something like this coming in the world of data. People will get incentives for sharing their data, a licensed version where independently you can download,
I'm still seeing heads being violently shaken. I am out of time. You said one line. So I'll give you one line.
This fintech regulation is about KYC. Okay, those companies didn't do proper KYC. Even a public sector bank was stopped because of the KYC. Paytm was stopped because of the KYC. All the big, it's about KYC, that's all. Okay, and you came to a stage without doing proper KYC, which was very huge. That means they allow you to innovate. So KYC and others are important to protect people. So I think we got to be clear.
Yeah, and I think the last thing on this is regulating fintech and regulating civil fabric are just both
two different.
You can't even put them in the same sentence.
Yeah,
but the question is about government intervention at the point.
Like, yeah, and for civil unrest, you need government involvement. Like the whole concept of civil liberty will vanish if you don't regulate it.
Yes,
at a policy level.
We will continue this over drinks this evening, and all of you are invited. So we will. This panel can clearly go on for another hour or two, but unfortunately I don't have an hour or two. So Aarin, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thanks, Vikram. Great comparing. Thank you.
Thank you.